Buenas and half a day, everyone. This informational hearing by the Committee on Air Transportation, Parks, Tourism, Higher Education, and the Advancement of Women, Youth, and Senior Citizens is hereby called to order. Today is Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021, and the time now is 2:01 p.m. For the record, and in accordance with open government law, notices for this hearing were sent on Monday, February 22nd, 2021, and again on Thursday, February 25th, 2021. In addition, this informational hearing was noticed on the Guam Legislature website. Today's agenda is an information hearing with the Guam Visitors Bureau. Joining me this afternoon are my Vice Chair, Vice Speaker Tina Rose Muñoz-Barnes, committee members Senator Mary Camacho Torres, Senator Tello Taidegui, and Senator Tony Ada, as well as Senator Chris Dueñas. Sujuas Masi colleagues for joining me today. But before we proceed with the discussion on the agenda, I'd like to first provide some general rules of conduct for all those in attendance. The chair will invite individuals who have signed up to testify to speak. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking, and we ask that you state your name and your title for record purposes. Each member will then be allowed to pose questions to the panel. We ask that all questions and testimony be kept to the substance and nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violations of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from the public hearing room. Sujuas Masi for your cooperation, everyone. I'd like to welcome our partners from the Guam Visitors Bureau who are here with us today, starting with Governor Carl T.C. Gutierrez, also Mr. Jerry Perez, and we have Ms. Nadine Leon Guerrero and Ms. Josie Villanueva from the Bureau. This informational hearing with the Guam Visitors Bureau will serve as an avenue for this branch to receive updates on the Bureau's progress and efforts for the recovery of our tourism sector. There's no denying that Guam's tourism sector has suffered greatly due to the effects of COVID-19. In the last fiscal year, plans for welcoming 2 million visitors resulted in an all-time low of less than 1 million visitors since fiscal year 2010. This significant decrease in visitor arrivals has resulted in the loss of tourism revenue and the loss of jobs for our working families in the hotel and restaurant industries. It's going to take a concerted effort from all of us, government and private sector partners alike, to tackle this great challenge before us. As the chair on tourism, I hope that we can work together to increase Guam's efforts and aid our main economic sector toward recovery and to find new ways to develop resilience come any disasters in the future. I also want to underscore the need to welcome our visitors in the safest way possible, and most importantly, protect our tourism employees and our people. I'd also like to welcome my colleague, Senator Frank Blas, for joining us. Thank you very much, sir. At this time, I'd like to invite our partners from the Guam Visitors Bureau to provide us with their presentation, and then I'll have my colleagues ask questions. So Governor Gutierrez, you may. Oh, please turn on your microphone, Governor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members, honorable senators of this committee. Thank you for inviting us. I know that we have met once informally and tried to, welcome you to overseeing GVB, because this is really the backbone of what's going to drive this economy. And we really want to make sure that although we are really negatively impacted by the lack of visitors coming in, we just don't have any collection of TAF. And in speaking with Chairman Sonny at that time, and Samson O'Hara, member of the board, and Jerry Perez, who is the vice president, we needed to really drive home the point that We are looking at Guam as we did back in 1970 when we put together the Guam Visitors Bureau. Seed money was granted to the Guam Visitors Bureau to go out and bring in and market our island as a great destination for tourists, particularly in the three countries close by, which is Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea. And that because we just don't have any tourist attraction fund money as we were getting in 2019, what we have been really lucky with is the tourist attraction fund being seeded by the military stay here and a few visitors. And so we want to let you know that in discussion with the governor, Luliang Guerrero, Jerry and I drove that point home as well. And back then we asked for some kind of non-TAF funding. And hopefully at that time she had CARES money. But CARES money is very restrictive. She wanted to set aside, we were asking for like $7 million to get us sort of just at the bottom edge. But she was thinking that if you're going to drive this economy, you need probably 20 million. So she was going to see what she could do about getting those restrictions lifted under CARES. And we didn't only not try to get that done. She asked me to reach out to Delegate San Nicolas and to ensure that if those monies that are coming in on this number 3 tranche of money that just passed the House a few days ago, to make sure that there are no restrictions for the use of those funds, so she could take at least the $20 million and give that to GVB. Now we all know that GVB is under 501c6, and under that, federal funds really cannot be sent to us. So luckily, that the governor asked me to reach out for that. That Delegate San Nicolas made sure that that GVB is eligible to receive funds on this $661 million that he has a lot of confidence will pass the Senate. And having that go through the Senate, we're looking at the at the end of the third week of March to hopefully have that signed into law. So we're looking for funds from there. And he made sure that GVB is eligible. That's a fact now. And so we're very, very bullish on our marketing efforts. The governor put together a task force led by GVB and GIDA and the airport and other entities to drive the recovery of our tourism market and bring back hopefully our 20,000 employees affected by it. And remember that we were, in 2019, we received close to $45 million in tax in TAF. And out of that $45 million, GVB's budget at that time was close to $23 million. Now we're down to below 5, that's the way I see it right now. So we're surviving from some of the funds that were there. We have really cut back. We've lost some employees. We never rehired anyone. We have to stick with what we have. And so Jerry and Nadine and Josie here have been put together a presentation here today. And hopefully Jerry can present to you through the board up there to his presentation. So at that time, I want to say that Nadine is in the back, Leon Guerrero, making sure that this thing doesn't have a glitch. And Josie is here to answer some of the more pressing numbers problem. So I'd like to have Jerry Parrish now, the Vice President of GVB, give his presentation. Jerry?
Thank you very much, Governor. Senator Shelton, at the last meeting we had when you first came on board, we shared with you what we saw were priorities of the Bureau, and I'm sharing this in the PowerPoint. At the last meeting, we shared that our priorities are COVID containment, and GVB redirecting all its resources toward that effort. Community preparation, we need to get ready. We need to take care of our destination so that we can provide a destination experience that is acceptable to our visitors and local residents. I also mentioned to you that we continue to engage with our markets, but none of this would happen unless we have the funding support. And I think at the time we mentioned to you that now's the time that we need non-TAF revenues to generate the business for the island. And the governor just mentioned the initiative discussed with Congressman Mike Nicholas. So I'll just go on and to our presentation. And this idea that we're reopening our tourism industry, I think, is more substantive than meaningful because, to be honest with you, Guam never closed its borders. We still welcome military and business travel and visit friends and relatives travelers, but we don't have the numbers, of course, because we don't have our source markets coming. So the long and short of it is we never closed our borders. But as you had acknowledged earlier, prior to COVID, we were tracking another year of record arrivals. And in 2020, we were running about 7.5% over the previous year to beat yet another record arrival year. But as you know, what happened was COVID hit. And before COVID hit, we were actually averaging close to 190 to 200,000 airline seats to the island. Now, with COVID, this is what happened. So instead of getting our usual 180 to 190,000 seats, we're all the way down to half that number. And then that also, of course, impacted our arrivals. So you can see our arrival numbers plummet. And the TF impact also suffered as a result of that. Instead of averaging 4 to 5 million a month, we're now barely scraping by with $150,000, $160,000. $400,000 a month. So the road to recovery is, let me see, this is pretty small. I'm sorry, I couldn't hardly read the, oh, okay, unlike previous setbacks, whether it's SARS or earthquakes or whatever, we normally recover within a few months in a V-shaped recovery. However, COVID pandemic is much more profound in its widespread impact because of the disrupted economies it's created, hurting health and well-being of communities across the world, causing bankruptcies across all economic sectors. And one of the biggest travel agents, for example, in Japan, JTB, some of you are very familiar, has cut its capital from 2.3 billion yen to 100 million yen. So you can see that as a significant representation of what's happening in the market. So the COVID impact is about $1.3 trillion lost in the world economy. And basically what has happened is a diminished travel demand. So the outlook, when we look at the current fiscal year, early on, we had a lot more arrival forecasted, but as the COVID impact lingered, it became obvious that this is going to be in for a long haul. So if you look at the different trade organizations like WTTC, UNWTO, ICAO, IATA, their pre-COVID arrivals are estimated to be not before 2024. PATA, who you folks are familiar with, has a mid-range estimate of 3/4 of 2019 arrivals, but their severe scenario is less than 50% of 2019 arrivals. So translating that locally, we're looking at basically 5% of pre-COVID arrivals, or about 82,000 visitors. This is actually not just a wild estimate, but this is based on actual first quarter performance. It's also based on scheduled airlift and load factors. So this $82,000 is what is being forecasted for 2021 arrivals. And even this is at risk if we don't really ramp up our effort to allow visitors to Guam. And that's the genesis of the governor creating this GVB recovery task force. There are basically 3 strategic issues for recovery. One of them has to do with local issues. The other one has to do with our source market issues. And the other one has to do with air service. Starting with local issues, we were able to, as a community, through hardship and through cajoling and through controversy, but bottom line is we were able to contain the virus to a point where we're getting a lot more optimistic about opening the island. And we have actually, if you recall, the CAR score that monitors our situation has to do with the COVID area risk score, and that is a reflection of how well we're containing the virus on different metrics. But the ideal score, we've been told by the physician group, is the medical community was identifying 2.5 as the ideal CAR score to maintain. You know, of course, that since December 3rd, our CAR score has been below 2.5 and currently running at 0.2. So we also have the highest alert app adoption in the country. And so we pretty much were able to control our pandemic as well as having more people going through the vaccine program. And so I think we're probably among the best, if not the best in the country, for containing the virus and for fatalities per 100,000. So this is good for us because now we can begin to come up with our messaging campaign to communicate clear and unified public health policies to residents and visitors concerning the safety and hygiene measures that are in place at our hotels, our retail shops, our option tours, restaurants, bars, ground transportation, and other attractions, including public facilities such as our airport and boat harbor and parks. So this is a messaging campaign that we can translate to our markets, telling them that we've been able to contain the virus so that we can now have a safe destination experience for not only visitors, but also local employees in our businesses. Some of the local issues also involves getting ready for more visitors. We only have our destination to sell. And so we need to fix our destination, spruce it up, take care of our flooding problem in Tumon, and clean up our area. The Public Works now is enforcing laws on dilapidated buildings, and so we're making progress on that because they need to go through a lengthy process in order to have legal standing when they invoke, levies on the property. And so we also are maintaining our visitor service officer activity, taking care of people's safety. This is new equipment that one of the vendors has that will make it easier for us to now clean the culverts down in Tumon. We have basically 3 culverts down there, and it took us a long time to clear one culvert manually. We had like 2 or 3 people down there slugging away, dealing away. But now with this equipment, we are able to clear the culvert without sending anybody down to unsafe conditions. This is just a visual representation of some of the different activities that our VSOs perform down. And even though they're doing this for our visitors, they're also doing this for our local residents because we have local residents who also have every right to enjoy the amenities of our destination product. We also are going to be rolling out our electronic declaration forms. I think last time we had a discussion, we mentioned the fact that the whole travel industry is digitizing and less contact. And so this is one of the initiatives that we set forth a few months ago, and it's come to fruition. We're having the software developed early this year in January. In February, we did our beta testing and installation of the kiosks and the computers and scanners, and we expect there to be an official launch on March 25th. So what this means is that if you have a handheld device, you can download a QR code and basically come to the airport just scanning your QR code. And you can do that, you can download your QR code either before you board airplane to come to Guam, or in the plane, or on arrival. And if you don't have a handheld device, we have these kiosks that you can go to and enter your information, and it'll all be done electronically. So this also not only captures visitor information, but also customs and quarantine law enforcement issues. A side benefit of this, actually, for the customs folks is there's a way that it captures information that can monitor the efficiency of the customs officers because it times the encounter. This is yet another part of what I mentioned earlier about digitizing as much as possible the travel industry. GVB has embarked on a digital academy to help upskill the local workforce, either as business people or employees. And we're continuing this digital education. Part 1 is understanding the digital consumers workshop, and tomorrow will be another e-commerce 101 lecture. One of the things that we've been kind of struggling with is we had a public health policy that is very strict, and I think no one is arguing the need for strictness, but at some point we need to start modifying the policy that would allow entry of visitors, because the current policy of requiring a 2-week quarantine, even if you have a vaccine and even if you test negative, could be relaxed a bit. And that's the role of this GVB task force that's working to reopen the island, is that we're going to come to some accommodation on what we need to do to allow visitors to come to Guam by perhaps relaxing some of the requirements. And the only way you can do that is to increase the number of vaccinations on the island so that you acquire herd immunity, perhaps among island residents and employees. And so that's one of the tasks that the GVB Visitor Task Force is going to be performing is what are the specific needs that we need to satisfy for there to be public health approval for arrival. And this includes a vaccination program for our frontline workers. It includes inspection program on arrivals and all these other different issues that would culminate in authorization to move with more liberal policy. So we expect a new public health policy, hopefully before May 1st, when the governor has announced the opening. And this new public health policy, we hope, would be more visitor sensitive and more practical in terms of protocols. And this can only happen as we have more vaccinations among our local residents and frontline employees. So this reopening task force would be, GVB's task force would involve the Airport Authority, GHRA, Public Health, and CDC officials so that we can all come to some agreement as to what is a practical and realistic, risk-proportionate policy that can facilitate increased arrivals. If we did this, then there's a very good chance that we can actually increase our current estimates from 82,000 to 107,000, a 30% increase, and perhaps even a stretch goal of 131,000. So in terms of the source market issue that I alluded to, we never went dark. We stayed engaged by communicating with our travel and trade partners as well as government people involved, by holding webinars, virtual trade shows. One particular trade show we had in Korea about a month ago had more than 200,000 participants. So there is interest in Guam that we need to make sure that we stay top of mind. So we've intensified our social media strategy in both, in all countries, Japan, Korea, and Taiwan, and want to share with you some of the positive results from this. So we have ongoing travel and trade engagement by having trade shows, continuous airline meetings, and so on. In Japan, for example, just recently we had over 25 million impressions and almost 1 million clicks. In Korea, we continue to, our representative there continues to engage the market in creative ways. Besides the online trade show, for example, if you look at this picture at the bottom, the movement, these are tourists. Basically, it's kind of a contest in getting them interested on showing themselves in Guam. So they have a picture of Guam and they show themselves doing stuff on the island. So that's kind of a cutesy thing. And this is another picture of a scene on Guam and the tourists inserting themselves in a Guam scene. That's an example of some of the social media hype that continues to take place, even though they can't come to Guam yet or are not able to come to Guam yet. We want to keep them engaged. We also continue our travel agency co-op promotion with these companies, YB Tour, Lotte, JTB, Interpark, and so forth. This gives you an example of the response we got from Naver and from Kakao. That dip you see on the right actually is because we had our social media vendor contract expired and we had to go out with an RFP. But you can see very quickly coming right back after we signed a social media vendor contract. Taiwan, very similar activity online, and we continue to push this GUAM, give us a moment theme to create images of Guam and aspirational messages of them being interested in coming to Guam once they can go. We are at the point now where we're going to be transitioning from give us a moment to get up and move, another GUAM acronym, but that only will come after we have worked out all the details that would enable us to assure safety among local employees and residents, as well as visitors to Guam. We have media interviews in Taiwan and continue to do a lot of other different things, including a broadening of involvement beyond just leisure travel into medical issues and government and business issues. This gives you another idea of the user engagement in Taiwan social media. You can see how we continue to climb in terms of our involvement there. Airline. Air service is going to respond to consumer demand. And so we need to generate enough demand for there to be interest among the airlines. That being said, however, we still have service from for example, United and Philippine Airlines and Jin Air to some degree. You should know that United never really stopped flying the Honolulu and Narita through Guam. They've even resumed limited service to the Philippines and have become kind of a hub for freight to Asia. Then in Japan, these are the anticipated schedule from JAL. I think this April 15 date, though, was pushed back another month. So that was why it was important for us to announce early, because of the long lead time necessary for equipment to be scheduled, crew to be scheduled, and for the travel distribution to start selling the island. It takes more than just a couple days. In South Korea, these are the airlines that will be servicing Guam. We still have Jin Air come to the island in limited flights, and Korean Airline, Air Seoul, Tiway, and Jeju probably another month or two. Taiwan, China Airlines, as you know, suspended until the end of March. I don't know whether this would hold or maybe they'll extend it another month. We shall see. But the interesting thing here is that EVA Air, who you remember pulled out of Guam several years ago, wants to come back again and has announced plans to renew Guam service. In addition to that, Starlux has applied with their Civil Aeronautics Administration for flights to Guam and 14 other U.S. destinations. So there's renewed interest from Taiwan. Even though Taiwan is only about 2% of our market mix, I think we're able to grow the numbers and maintain the percentages overall for Guam, because of renewed interest in Taiwan and Guam beyond leisure travel. There are some geopolitical issues that play into our opportunities with Taiwan. In fact, just today in the paper I read where a local company partnered with a Taiwan company to mass produce PPE equipment. So those are some of the early indications that there's more than just leisure travel, I think, that we can generate from Taiwan. You should also know that Taiwan is probably a country with the highest percentage of overseas travel, probably next to Germany and the European countries. For a small country like Taiwan, they have over 60%, I believe, of their population that do travel. So, having said all of that, I think it's important for us as we think about restarting or reopening our tourism industry, that we recalibrate our visitor arrival expectations. I had mentioned where we were or are today in terms of the 1970s level of arrivals that we are estimating so far. And I have shared some of the strategic reasons for diminished travel demand, mainly because of bankrupted global economies, ongoing reconfiguration of the tourism industry value chain, and radical departures from historically driven scale and consumer hygiene sentiments in the industry. So I think it'd be instructive for us to see COVID as a global tourism issue and look at its impact, and it would be helpful in helping us recalibrate our perspective and in framing expectations for recovery. If you look at this slide, for example, these are some of our peer group islands around the Caribbean, around the Indian Ocean, the Maldives, the Seychelles, and you can see that, I can't use the point. Anyway, you can see that the percent of recovery relative to 2019, some of them are already up in their 20s and 30s. So they're getting 20 to 30% of pre-COVID arrivals already coming in. The one common denominator is that no quarantine is required with a negative PCR test. Our local medical community is not quite comfortable with that, and that's the reason we've established this task force to see what issues we need to work on to be able to loosen up and allow there to be entries to the island. Because if you look at Guam, if you take away the military visitor activity here, we're probably next to nothing in terms of recovery compared to our peer group islands. So I wanted to show this, the global tourism impact. As you can see, the first box there, that was SARS. The second box there is the economic recession of 2008. These events hardly made a blimp in this curve. Until you get to the top, that's COVID. Okay, so the SARS, we lost about 2 million travelers. In the recession, we lost about 32 million travelers. COVID, we've lost 1.1 billion with a B travelers. So that's the impact. Closer to home, if you look at the first dotted line on top, that's what we ended up with at the end of the fiscal year. And we ended up with numbers that are equivalent to the 1990s, only because the first 5 or 6 months of that year were record arrival months that kind of buffeted the overall annual numbers. But if you look at the bottom dotted line, that's apples to apples, and that's where we are. So our expectation is that if we get this task force working and resolve it to the point where we can open up tourists and with acceptable protocols, it's not unachievable to increase it to 107,000 or 30% increase from current estimates. We might even be able to hit a stretch goal of 130,000. So the market potential is there. Safety and cost remain top concerns across all markets. Japan, 17% have indicated they are considering traveling to Guam already. Taiwan, there's opportunity for not only leisure travel, but for business travel. Korea, if you look at the pie chart on the right, between the blue and the green, you see basically 27% of the consumers we interviewed through Anthology indicated they intend to travel internationally within the next year. So we are we are geographically positioned to take advantage of this because most of these travelers would rather wear a mask for 4 hours than wear a mask for 8 or 9 hours to go to other locations. Plus, we are probably still the #1 U.S. destination for Korean visitors. So, Guam is underperforming our peer group of islands, as I indicated. Reopening task force was created to change this and to generate business for the island. The bad news is it's like starting from the 1970s again. The good news, however, is that the island's physical plant, institutional infrastructure, and nexus to markets can enable recovery without waiting 50 years. So thank you very much, Madam Chairman. That's our presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perez, for that. And I'd like to ask if you can elaborate on a different topic that wasn't included in your presentation today. But I'm wondering about the safety measures that you're perhaps working with our local restaurants and businesses for our employees in the tourism sector. What kind of recommendations is the Bureau making, or perhaps the task force will be making, to the Antiviral Prioritization Policy Committee for the vaccinations? And what kind of testing are we looking at for our local workforce who will be serving our incoming tourists?
Well, let me answer that in 3 parts. Part 1 is that's the job of the task force, is to collaborate with GHRA to identify with specificity what needs to be done at each property from the point of view of making it a safe destination or a safe place. And a large part of that would have to come from public health guidance, okay? The second part has to do with what kind of tests or what kind of medical strategy will be used. That would still need to be worked out with, I'm speaking individually now, not as a task force. That is the job of the task force to resolve with CDC and public health, so that, number 3, we get comfort that the people in the front line that are serving our visitors and the families that they're associated with on the island, first and foremost, are safe. And one of the planks in our strategy is to figure out how quickly we can get as many of these employees vaccinated as possible, not just the elderly, but people who are in the front line.
Thank you for that answer. I appreciate that, Mr. Perez, because I'm sure, just like my colleagues here, we're very concerned that we protect our frontline workers who will be serving our incoming tourists, and we want to be able to serve the tourists safely while keeping our hometown community safe. So I think that's a priority for all of us that I hope you will consider on the task force moving forward. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, that's top of the list, actually, of the task force work stream. There are several things that need to be done, but it all relates to, number 1, how do we protect and keep our local residents and frontline employees safe?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask my vice chair if she has any questions at this time.
Si Jules Mossy, Madam Chair, and I too, Mr. Perez and Governor, are very concerned about the safety of our tourists coming in. And as you share those very conservative numbers, allowing us to open at 130,000 in comparison to the 1.3, if I didn't know the hard work that you guys put in, I'd say it was very bleak, but I know that with your hard work, this is just a very, very, very conservative number. And I know that our source markets with Taiwan, Korea, South Korea, and Japan are very strong, and that the committee at GVB has worked really hard, and I know that the board also is working closely with you guys. One of the questions that I did want to ask, just based on what has been holding GVB to stand, is the military and the military buildup and the facility capabilities that are being utilized right today. Do you foresee that becoming stronger in the coming months?
I think, I don't think it's going to be much stronger than the current levels. The only reason they seem to dominate the scene is because we have no arrivals from our foreign source markets, and so that's all we have right now, basically military and VFR business travel.
Do you believe that the source markets and the military working closely with the training that they have there, do you think those two can coexist together?
Yes, there's no reason why they can't coexist. I mean, if you look at Hawaii, for example, the biggest headquarters for PACOM is, military there, but they have a very thriving tourism industry pre-COVID. So I don't foresee there to be a mutually exclusive existence on Guam. That's my personal opinion.
So you believe that with the portfolio that Guam has with its rooms, that there is an opportunity to work closely with both, with all the source markets from our Asian island nations to the military buildup?
Yes, believe so. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Paris. Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and wait for the second round. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to ask
Thank
those
you.
couple of questions.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'd also like to recognize my colleagues who have joined us, Senator Jim Moylan, Senator Frank Blas, and Senator Sabina Perez Utuasmasi. Senator Mary Camacho Torres.
Thank you. Hi, Governor Gutierrez and Dr. Perez. I just had a question about the electronic declaration. Is this a declaration that is going to replace the handwritten forms that we currently receive on the airplane?
Yes.
Okay. So, is there going to be also additional efforts? I know you had the ESTA program to help with the immigration processing in the lines, but is generally the processing time at the airport a continual effort with GVB?
When we were contemplating this in the beginning, we were overly ambitious by linking identity platforms to Customs and Quarantine and CBPF, right? But we couldn't even get to first base talking to them on that. And then we decided, well, let's do what we can now, and then we can build on that, for example, for international health clearance in the future. So in our QR code, we've made a provision so when public health comes up with their own app, for example, we can have that link into our app, in the QR code. But we thought that it's a good idea to start at least someplace, and so the visitor information and customs and quarantine forms was a logical, beginning.
And I would tend to agree with you because one of the attractions for going through certain ports of entry is the ease, being able to go up to a kiosk and process quickly and just move from one station to another. So I think that it's good that you're digitizing and modernizing that process. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I hope that you get very far with the GVB task force as far as the new protocols for quarantine and the like, because as you alluded, we don't expect tourism to rebound immediately, so the process and the protocols for COVID screening is going to be at least for another year, probably, right? You would think?
Yes, that's right.
But what I wanted to ask, though, in your presentation, you had enabling policy needed. Is that a policy that is a local policy to be enacted by Guam law? I'm a little confused what you mean by enabling policy.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it necessarily be done by law, but public health, for example, has a policy on, you know, the 14-day quarantine, right? That's not established by law, but that's basically the policy of the department to keep Guam safe. And so what we were saying is we're at a point now where we need to craft a risk proportionate policy that recognizes the need to keep the island safe, but at the same time allows there to be visitor sensitive concerns. I can't tell you what that is exactly right now, because that I think is going to have to be the work of the task force to work with CDC and public health on what is acceptable. But having said that, the overriding concern that is an overarching issue on this thing is increasing the vaccinations of our local community, because that is the best way to protect. And increasing the vaccinations not only in the demographically qualified group, but in particular the young people working in the industry. Yeah.
May I, Senator? In the past, we've been working outside of the main function of Department of Public Health and Social Services and the governor and the surgeon cell. They were more concerned about what they're going to do to bring down the CAR score and make sure that we're all safe here. Now that the governor has felt really, really comfortable, that I think we've turned the corner, that she has now gone beyond just dealing with those agencies, the surgeon cell and the public health and her office, is that she has seen that now it's time to move forward towards the recovery. And she put together that task force that now is a standing committee at GVB, including the airport and GIDA, and the surgery cell and public health. So now we are sitting all in the one room, trying to make sure that we come up with the right mix of regulations so that we can be speaking, you know, not reacting, but we are contributing.
That's very reassuring to hear, and I'm glad. And one last question. With Taiwan, Taiwan was very active at the start of COVID with providing PPEs to Guam, and I know that they most recently stood up their diplomatic office again, and they've had a medical mission also in the interim. Do you foresee, I was surprised, not surprised, but it was refreshing to know that they also are one of the highest outbound populations for tourism. Do you foresee then with the new Director General in Guam and the medical relationship that they are looking to establish, that there is now an emerging niche market with Taiwan that could help supplant the dwindling or the leveling off of the source markets, if you can comment?
I'm glad you brought that up, Senator, because the governor is very bullish on Taiwan. First one she wanted to go and make a trip to is Taiwan. And getting the Taiwan Economic Office opened up here was a big plus. And not only did it get opened up, but a few months later, it kind of became upgraded when the United States took away the one China policy and now, in essence, has a two China policy, which elevated the status here on Guam. Hopefully, we would have a consular corps here soon on that. But now the Director General has been elevated one step and holding that position of Consul General. And so they are more bullish, I think, that they're probably our best ambassador now for Taiwan visitors. There's 24 million people in Taiwan, And I understand that 17 million of those people travel outside of the country. So even if we get 1%, that's 240,000. And the best year we had was around less than 30,000, but close to that. But they spend more here than any other group of tourists. They also are now promoting Guam in a drawing contest. I don't know if you read about that. They just want to be able to make Guam and Taiwan almost become a sister city, nation, and an island. And so in the next few weeks, the students from all public schools, private schools, University of Guam, are kind of drawing what their perception is of the relationship of Taiwan and Guam. And then they'll take that. Hopefully the governor will be the one to unveil that at our marketing office in Taiwan and have the people come in and get good publicity on that. But they are expending money on their own to be able to promote Guam because they think that there's more than tourists that can come here. They have already 2 airlines that are coming, the 3rd one next year. And we want to continue the movement of patients to Taichung or Taiwan Hospital. We want to be able to do agriculture and aquaculture, bring fresh fruits in shipment. That is why we're trying to go back during the administration of Felix Camacho in 2006. They got a waiver on the cabotage of cargo. It was granted for 2 years, but it was really never used because there just wasn't a long enough runway to be able to do the big haul. And the fact is that the airlines that served Guam did not have all cargo airlines, and they just put a few in the belly. But now Taiwan is looking to hopefully get that cabotage again, bring fresh vegetables here, fish or whatever, and then transit over to any place else in the United States. So we're going to look at that, getting that exemption again for cargo.
Fantastic, and I know they've got an excellent museum system too that can help us as we develop our island product and our cultural identity. So I hope that that is another part of the relationship.
I think they really want to attach Taiwan to Guam, America in Asia, as the former speaker said, because that's really wanting to make sure that we are the first step into United States. And let me say one thing that when we were interviewing our marketing rep in Japan, and we're not done yet, but the first thing they said when they came back with their presentation is that, and they took a survey in Japan, they said that the United States, Guam, is the most trusted destination for tourists, is Guam. And so we're going to start marketing that because Guam is America in Asia.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Senator Duenas?
Madam Chairman and Chairwoman, and Governor Gutierrez and Jerry, Dr. Perez. Most definitely, I can say that I feel very comfortable with the two of you at the helm, and you've definitely had, I think, some of the larger presence in the community and in communicating the message of working to get our economy going, and a very nice presentation today. Just looping back to this issue, because I think it's definitely the frontline issue that you mentioned is the vaccinations. And do you intend, it's kind of a twofold question, do you intend to, of course, accelerate that as a marketing point to our source markets that, working with, of course, our hoteliers and everything else to say, we have 100% fully vaccinated staff that's serving you and in our destination.
Are you saying that are we just going to concentrate on our source markets as before?
Well, yeah. I mean, just in terms of part of the advertising, campaign as we ramp up, because I think it's of course the safety and security of our community is foremost, but also just that added confidence that those that are looking at Guam, to return in tourism, saying, man, maybe even our staff wearing like a green bracelet, indicating that they've received the vaccine. That when people come in and they check into our hotels, they feel very confident that staff has received the vaccine and is at a very, very high safety level.
I think we're making really great headway in Korea. Let me say, the new Korea marketing director at GVB is now Mr. Ho Yoon, and the vice is Ben Ferguson. And between those two, we've been working all weekend with Mr. Ho. I mean, the guy's connection into Korea, all of them are his classmates that are now running the darn government. And now it's bringing us even at a higher recognition. And so we're trying to make sure that Guam is now looked upon as very, very, very safe. And so he's working on that. And then we're going to bring that to them to say that they put Guam in front of the line, put Guam in front of the airline scheduling, aircraft scheduling, because you're only 4 hours away. And as a matter of fact, there's so many businessmen here from your own country, from Korea, that need to survive as well. So we've got really a good group of people now moving this thing forward. Yeah. And also, let me say that we're looking also, at least my vision is that Micronesia, Guam could be the jumping off point for magnificent Micronesia. And even bring in Papua New Guinea, which we had before. We know we had 2 airlines flying to Papua New Guinea and back. And hopefully that we can also come together with the Micronesian chief executives that the governor asked us to bring attention to that, so that we can put together a destination plan, because Guam will certainly benefit directly from that plan, where they come in here and then they go there and come back here and then they go back home. So we're really looking more for that.
Several years
I think
ago,
following up on Carl's message there is that it's very much going to be a fundamental plank in our messaging. It's not just going to tell them that we're a safe destination, but describing in detail why it is we are safe. What are we doing in our hotels? What is the CAR score? What is the level of vaccination? And all these. So it's not just enough to tell people you're safe. We need to communicate the details on why we are a safe destination.
Yeah, and Governor, a few years ago when I went to Pohnpei, actually is one of the fastest growing in Micronesia too. So I share that vision of the Micronesian experience, jumping off of Guam. Just one final question, and I agree with you, Jerry, on this one, and Governor, that you presented this challenge of the issue of the quarantine. Have we been able to go and get some statistical information from these, as you indicated here, that have the that indicate the marking that they don't require the quarantine with a negative PCR within 72 hours? Do we have any up-to-date data on the success rate of that in terms of any safety risk that's been identified?
You mean in our peer group islands?
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, we can get that. I mean, I just wanted to share the overview that the one common denominator there is a simple one, which is a negative PCR test, no quarantine. We're more strict than that, and understandably so, but I think now we're in a situation where with the vaccines coming and so forth, we can get beyond that and even have a better standard than just a negative PCR test. We can even use that to our advantage, that we're even safer because it's beyond just a PCR test.
Yeah, I agree, and I think if we can just do some extraction on this, on the as you said, on the peer markets, and basically maybe that information will start to make the medical community even a little bit more, convinced. But I certainly understand, the care with which you're taking to move forward. But I just thinking that this might be an additional piece of data that might bring a level of comfort, because certainly, with the type of vacations that our source markets take, this is going to be a tough one to get over, to get over that hurdle. So like I said, I appreciate the work you're doing and keep up the good work.
Yeah. Actually, we're very encouraged that it's the medical community, the Surgeon Cell, CDC, and other doctors have actually been very encouraging in terms of their opinion that we're getting more vaccines now, and that we're getting at a place where we can start relooking at this, and that was the whole reason for part of the task force.
Madam Chair, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Dueñas. Senator Titagli?
Seduce Masi, Madam Chair, for the opportunity, and thank you so much for being here this afternoon. Hi, Josie. Always good to see you, the money person. Mr. Ferris, good to see you as well. And Governor Gutierrez, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing at GVB, and especially for the community as well. You've been an advocate on destination management, and that's something that I did when I was at GVB, and worked very hard in trying to not just make our island a great place to visit, and not only in Tumon. We're talking about outside of Tumon, and that's very, very important. So I hope that whatever funding comes your way, you'll continue that effort, and the effort most especially outside of Tumon, the villages. Bring back the fiesta, when they used to have it. They were funding it at one time, GVB, hosting a particular family in a village, and inviting tourists to come by that house. It was wonderful. Inalahan, should I say, was a great part of that. I see the scope of work that you're trying to initiate here, and it says here the local, then source market, and then air service. And we all know air service is very detrimental, air service, bringing the airlines. And you talked about the task force, and it says reopening the task force. When you say reopening, so when did it shut down, the task force? Is it something that was implemented a while ago and then never utilized, and now because it says reopening. Can you explain what that meant?
Yeah, that was the point I was making at the beginning of the presentation, that reopening is really a misnomer.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Reopening is really a misnomer in our mind, because we never closed. But reopening as it relates to our source markets, I think, is what the focus is.
Yeah, I think too, it's very, very important that you engage the airport. I've always tried to put those two, GVB and the airport together, even when it comes to funding issues, because without the flights coming in, we have no tourists. So whatever efforts that you're continuing to make is great. I know you're going after these Japan markets, and I know, Governor Gutierrez, you have a lot of connections out there, with other airlines, and try to entice them to come to Guam. So I greatly appreciate that effort, and pray you continue to go that route. You mentioned 83, the amount of tourism that is anticipated coming to Guam based on COVID, pre-COVID. Are we reaching those goals currently right now? Are you doing an estimate of a monthly income from the fiscal year of October 1st until now? How are we doing with the numbers?
The 82,000 number that you see, part of it is based on actual arrivals that we already got in October, November, December, and January. So those numbers are based on actual arrivals plus estimated load factors for scheduled air seats already for Guam. But in our earlier presentation, I did say that even that number might be at risk if we don't really ramp up and start making some changes that would generate more, arrivals. And that was why I believe the governor formed this GVB task force to come out with a more defined strategy on local vaccinations, on new, protocols, or whatever is needed. So
Okay.
we're just getting started. But tomorrow will be really our first meeting to get to know who's important, and who needs to do what, when, where, and how, and all the grunt work. So that'll be an important meeting.
You're right, Jerry. I think another quarter will kind of gauge us as to where we're at, and what's coming in. So Josie, I don't need to have you there by yourself. I do have a question for you. how the allotments are coming into GVB. Are they coming in on time?
Senator, no. In fact, we are due for December and January. We are looking to, monthly, we should be receiving $532,000, but recently we only received October and November. And according to DOA, they only have top surplus of amounting to $191,000 that they are able to release.
So you're short by how much?
So we are supposed to receive 1.2 million for the last 2 months, and we haven't received anything. So we're technically short by 1 million already. Plus for February, so about 1.5.
Wow.
It's already March, sorry.
And it's already March, yes. Okay, well, I wish you the best on that, trying to grab some of that funding, because you're going to need that, especially just regular operations at the office. So I know, Governor, you're pushing on that too, making sure your allotments are coming in. So other than that, I just wanted to know that update to see really how in dire need GVB is right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Senator Titlegy. Senator Ada?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Perez, Governor Gutierrez, Josie, Miss Josie, how you guys doing? Good. Mr. Perez, you spoke about the tourist arrivals and those that are coming in from our market destinations, Japan, Korea, Taiwan. Do you know or have a rough estimate as to what the numbers are that are those that are fully vaccinated in those countries that, should, when we start getting our tourist arrivals, bypassing quarantine or not even going into a quarantine facility for those that are fully vaccinated? Do we know what kind of numbers we're looking at in those tourist markets?
Taiwan.
Japan now is ready to, I guess, roll out the vaccination process, and Korea also, and Taiwan has already started, I believe. So we just have to wait for them.
Yeah, to see where we're at
And
with
so that's
their
why
numbers.
I was thinking, I know they kind of laughed at me, but because of the slowness of their vaccination getting to their countries, some are producing their own vaccinations. I felt that Guam could also try to capitalize on that vaccination process here. If they do the Moderna or the Pfizer, there's also the Johnson & Johnson, which is only 66% effective, and the Pfizer is 96 and Moderna is 95, but you take 2 doses. That we were trying to figure out whether we can really, now at this day and age where people can work outside of their offices, they can go and work out of the country. They can come here for 30 days, get a long-term stay, and then work from there, get their first dose and their second dose, and we'll just call it Airbnb.
Yeah. That's a good one. And the reason why I bring that up is, I was Googling and looking up the Game Changer. You mentioned the partners that are working with you, GIAA, GHRA, public health, and CDC stakeholders. And the CDC stakeholders was the red flag there, because when we Google Guam, we're still at level 4, very high risk according to the CDC. So what is the administration and I guess our public health and GVB doing to reassure CDC that what they have posted as of February 2nd is inaccurate, being that our CAR score has been going down since December of last year, and we're now at 0.2. So what have we communicated with the CDC, or has the administration communicated with the CDC to say, you know what, I think we need to be taken off that high risk, the very high risk status?
It's not for lack of trying, believe me. It's just the process in the federal government or the bureaucracy on that, but they have. And it's been hurting us, but they have been working on it. And hopefully, soon somebody's going to realize that they have made a big mistake in keeping us in that level. But public health is doing it, and they're reaching out to make sure that that changes.
Yeah, and that's very important, Governor, because we can say that Guam is the safest destination that our tourists can come, but when people Google the island and they see that CDC still has an issue with us, then I think that's going to counteract what we're trying to do in bringing more tourists to Guam.
You're absolutely correct on that, and that's why they're trying to make sure that that happens. And because Guam right now, and just listening to the people out there in the United States, is that Guam now has really elevated itself to a really safe destination.
Yeah,
and so we just need to get those guys in the bureaucrat seats that are langa, and we'll make them change it.
Yeah, definitely. And, and that's the goal we want to work towards, is ensuring that we can open up our island and everyone does know it's safe and the CDC can take us off that level 4. Where are we at with working with the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Associations in the hotel occupancy? Are the hotels ready to accept tourists? How many, do we have the room capacity to slowly start opening again and accepting them?
Well, just in speaking with the people that own the hotels, they're just sitting by, ready to receive. And some of them, of course, were very happy that not only do they staycation people from here, the military families, but also the military that's been detailed here for different programs. They're kind of filling in the void, but they're trying to continue to open, like Nico Hotel, for example. They don't really sometimes, if you don't have the military, they don't have anybody there, but they continue to open the restaurant twice a week or something like that to get our people in there, just to get the employees working and getting the procedures all honed up so that they know what it's going to be like when the real stuff comes down.
Right.
But they're waiting. They're not like they're locked up and being musty and mildewed. They are really keeping it up, waiting for the grand finale and opening.
Yeah, you said it right, Governor, was the staycations, and that's what's, I believe, helping, the hotels and the restaurants, is where our local people are actually going to visiting and staying the weekend or taking their families out and going for dinner. And I think once the governor starts to open to 75% the restaurant occupancies and, allowing more people into the restaurants, that, the outside markets will be able to come in and see that, the locals are comfortable going to their hotels, they're comfortable going to their restaurants. I think we can now travel to Guam and make that our vacation destination. But everything that you guys are doing, my hat's off. And this is one market that we all need to pay attention to. It's because it's the most vulnerable market right now, and that we're trying everything that we can to rebuild. And I hope that when the governor does get her discretionary funds, that $661 million does come to fruition and does come in, that she gives GVB the funds that they need to ensure that we turn around and open up our market to the tourists so that we can start realizing those revenues coming in. Because like Ms. Josie said, you're already $1.5 million short. Yeah. And when we look at what was said at our last meeting, is that the variance of what BBMR is looking and OFB is tracking is you're looking at about a 3.5 to a $6.6 million shortfall. And I think that's very concerning, because if our visitor market is not here, we got a lot of problems ahead of us.
When Jerry and I were speaking to the governor about needing non-TAF funds, and we just went in there with a little low number so that we don't shock her immediately, right? So I said, I think we can probably survive with 7 million. And then she came out and says, no, I think 20 million you guys need to get started with. Because she went back and looked at what it took for seed money to begin GVB, and it's like a new beginning for GVB.
Mm-hmm. And that's so true, Governor. And hopefully, like I said, you'll be able to get your funds and sustain GVB and bring in our tourists back to Guam again. Thank you for your time,
Senator.
sirs. Ms. Josie, thank you for your time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Addis. Senator Blas?
Madam Chair. And Governor, and Dr. Perez, good afternoon. Thank you, Josie. Thank you for being here as well. A couple of questions I had, and one of them is that we've estimated, or we're going to estimate that we're looking at arrivals anywhere between 80 and 130,000 people for this year?
If I can clarify, the 83,000 is the current estimate for 2021 fiscal year.
Right.
What we're saying is that the 30% plus up is achievable if we have a more realistic set of protocols that can encourage travelers. And depending on how much airline we have, there's a stretch goal of 130,000. But the current estimate of 82,000, unless we really do something, even that is at risk.
Okay. And of the 82,000, Dr. Paris, how many of those are actually, of those arrivals are actually local or individuals that have already a direct connection to the island through residency, family, business, as opposed to your tourists?
Most of those are really military and business. If
Okay.
there are local visitors, VFR, visit friends and relatives,
Right.
they would probably be very small in relation to the total number.
So to get a better grasp of this, today, down in Tumon, the possibility of a bona fide tourist is almost negligible or non-existent? Is that very safe to say?
That's a fair statement, yeah.
Okay. I'm still trying to wrap my head around what we're trying to accomplish here, okay? And how we can help you in getting this. Governor, it's kind of surprising. You went to Governor Liu and asked $7 million, and she said, no, I'll give you 20. First off, I know that you're not the kind of person that walks in and just will give an arbitrary figure. You'll back that $7 million up. That's just Governor Carl Gutierrez. But the 20 million and her offering of the 20 million, first off, did she say where she's going to get the $20 million?
Yes,
Is
that's
this
coming from the 661.
okay? On the right now, hopefully very safe. I'm trying to be as very optimistic as we can with the 661. She's already carved up at least 20 million for this effort.
Well, what we're trying to do, Senator, just so you know, that actually we're looking at beyond the beyond the 20 million. It's in our mind is a double 20 million.
Sure.
Double 20 million because we're not going to just use it to, because remember our budget is around 23 million. We're down now less than 5 million.
Right.
And to get up to the marketing effort that we need to compete with Hawaii and the big boys up there, we need that budget restored. But we also need at least $20 million plus the $20 million is to start the upgrade at Tumon and other areas that need upgrade. But also the fact that Matapang Beach, we have put together a nice rendering put together by our destination marketing group. We're going to relocate or locate the firefighters down there in that rendering, upgrade everything, make sure that the sump that's there, the undermined area, the water lens that's under there, like a cave where people are parking their heavy equipment now starting to sag. That's our people's beach area. So we need to upgrade that, and the rendering that they've come to GDB is really fantastic. It's upgraded. Not only will the tourists love it, but it's our people that's going to be there and hang out there, and the police will be there to launch their jet skis for emergencies within 2 minutes or 3 minutes instead of 20 minutes from Dedido. And they can still mingle with the police officers there. They're only a block down the road. So that that's an $18 million EDA grant that Public Works is working for us through GITA. And so hopefully we get that also. But the important thing is that we've got to upgrade some of our facilities. And if need be, we need some money to be able to knock down those derelict buildings that we may have to foreclose on and take over and remove it ourselves, because they're posing a lot of danger. And the roads are sagging. The paving bricks are going down. Right now, we had waterworks go out there last Saturday to make sure that they paved the road that they dug up, because people were breaking their tires on there. So it really looks bad. The grades are cutting the tires also. So if you don't upgrade Pleasure Island all the way up to the Hilton and up the hill, we better do it now while tourists are scarce.
So the 20 million, saying you had the 20 million from the 661, you're also looking at 18 million from the EDA?
Well, that's what we're applying for.
Okay.
18 million
Okay.
for that plan.
Now my concern is, well, you've got the 20 and the 8, this money to those projects. Let's go back now to your operational funding. You're 1.3 very short,
Yes.
with an
and
anticipation of about 8 million? Was it 8 million? 6 million? 8 million? 8 million.
the what? We're down below 6.
Okay, so your anticipated shortfall is about $6 million.
Shortfall, shortfall, we're
For your
23 million.
operation.
Operation was 23 million.
Right.
Okay,
And I'm
now-
assuming that in your operations, that's separate and apart from what you want to use the $20 million for.
That's another 20 million.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's another 20 million, right? So but then you're still short 6. Is that 6 going to be covered, anticipated by the?
No, we're okay now, as Josie will explain to
Josie,
you
what-
what we have. We're able to carry through the fiscal year.
Okay.
So far, Senator, whatever the shortfall that we have that we're not receiving yet from DOA is that we're using whatever we have, tighten our belts when we had to cut all our contracts. So it's some of the surplus from FY 2020. And also we have to, those funds that we have committed to upgrade our destinations development, like the culvert cleaning, the street light maintenance, the stormwater drainage. So we have to delay those projects in order for us to at least be able to fund our monthly operating expenses while we are still waiting for the TAF to come in, or whatever allotments that TOA can release to GVB. So basically, it's really trying to reprioritize, and whatever we have reserved for the market recovery, we try to spread it out and, spend only those that are a necessity for our operations.
Gee, that a lot of happy labor, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's so. I have to agree with my colleagues and sir, the concerted efforts that both of you are doing. You're in charge of what is probably one of the largest leg, or the most significant leg of our economy on the island. And thank you very much. I've been very much impressed over the few weeks, of the constant efforts to be able to keep us informed, not just this body, but the community, of what these efforts are, because we're in this together. We know this. And so from a standpoint of being, in the legislature policy, not wanting to get into the weeds of how you're going to do this, we just got to make sure that we recognize what those financial needs are going to be. And thank you, sir, for being here. I wish there were other agencies that can be just as proactive and just as that they take the time to come in and be able to talk about, these are the things that we need to do, this is where we need to go, this is why we need to do these things, and this is how we can all help each other. That's why I appreciate this conversation, because it gives us a great idea that when we come down to the budget this year is going to come down to want and need. So right now we're kind of struggling with trying to fund the things that we need to fund, and this is one of those areas we need to fund. Okay, so I appreciate this. This is why I'm trying to wrap my, okay, how, up past the 661, what are we looking at? Okay, so that when we do have to come in, unfortunately, if we have to cut budgets from some other agencies so that we can make sure that you have the money necessary to keep this island afloat, then that's the decisions that will have to be made. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Sus Mase.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Blas. Senator Perez.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to the Governor, Dr. Perez and Josie. Thank you for your presentation today and for being here. Yeah, a lot of questions were asked already. Just I want to ask some clarifying questions. So in regards to the electronic declaration form, which is going to be launched in, you said it's going to be launched?
This month, yeah.
This month, okay. I just, I'm kind of curious, so where is this information going to go to? Which agencies are going to have access to this information?
It's going to be very compartmentalized because the part of the information is not accessible, say, to GVB or anybody, because part of the information is customs and quarantine centered, and it has to be legally protected information. So the platform is basically a shared platform, and arrivals. There's a lot of duplicate information, right? Whether you're a customs question or visitor question, and all that would be fairly common. But then it starts to depart, and some of the information would divert to the customs platform, where only they have access to that, and those that go to GVB go to GVB, and that's it basically. But that was one of the strongest area that we were focused on, is the privacy issue. And because at that time when we first talked about this thing, we wanted to see how we can interface with the identity platform of like immigration and CBPS, so that when people come through the airport, they can have a seamless experience through, right? But it's not in the cards. And instead of waiting for a perfect formula, which will end up in nowhere, we decided just to do step at a time, and let's a little bit done on customs and quarantine and the GVB information. But that information be highly restrictive only to those that have relevant use of the information.
Senator, before we get away from the, because some people are watching this probably at home. You're live, right?
Yes.
And the thing about it is that they're probably the manamko, they're saying, man, I'm going to have to go through with a digital thing. I don't have a phone and all that, right? But these you can get these when you're in San Francisco. Your kids can help you fill it all out already before you go. So you're done. I mean, you can do it from wherever you're leaving from. And so it's really easy. And that's why it's going to make it, a lot more pleasant traveling and coming into a destination without having to fill out your forms on the plane. You've already done it. Your kids have done it, for you at home before you left.
Thank you for that. But I guess that brings up another question. In case you don't go through the electronic interface, would the manual still be available?
Oh, yes, yes. In fact, we will have the paperwork there standing by in case there's a glitch or a problem. But we've been doing beta testing this month, and so far seems to be working. But we'll still have backup paperwork, available, yeah.
And will it be also programmable to include health testing, so, say COVID testing?
Yes, our original concept was to really include public health information, but we were not able to do it because I think they might be doing their own app on contact tracing and so forth. But our QR code is set up so that you can link. Once they've got that thing sorted out, whether it's public health here or WHO or ICAO now and IATA are working on like health clearances for international travel. Whenever that's done, we can easily plug into our app.
All right, thank you. Another question about cabotage. So, Governor, you were mentioning the possibility that could be one way to grow the economy is expanding cabotage.
On the cargo, at least.
Sorry.
On the cargo, at least. The problem with when we go for a complete cabotage, right, passengers and cargo, is that we have our own hometown carrier, U.S. carriers that will probably fight us again like they did last time. That's why under the Felix Camacho administration, they did manage to get the waiver on the cargo. And the U.S. airlines really did not fight them much on that. They gave in on that, but we never used it. But as far as the passengers is concerned, I know that the only thing that I really want to be able to put pressure on U.S. airlines, if they fight us on doing a cabotage, for example, from Taiwan, where they fly here and pick up passengers here and fly to San Francisco, California, Las Vegas, anywhere over Hawaii. Because when I was governor, I put a lot of time and effort, even federal highway funds, to complete the 12,000-foot runway. It's been complete since 2015. There's been no flight out on nonstop to the West Coast. It wasn't used. They say that it's not enough passengers. So if there's not enough passengers for a U.S. carrier to carry there, then perhaps China Airlines, EVA, can come here, pick up passengers and fly to San Francisco, pick up our people here. And if they fight us on it, then some of them's got to at least start that route. Get a U.S. carrier to go there. But don't just leave it idle after we put millions and millions of dollars to extend it. So that's the argument back, that if they want a U.S. carrier to do it, then do it. But right now, it's not being done.
Thank you. And just one more question. There is something BSP had put together. It's called the New Tourism Repositioning Strategy. And, my talks with them, they handed it over to GVB, and it's regarding rebranding and repositioning. Do you have any updates on that?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
So there was a study that BSP had started. It's called the New Tourism Repositioning Strategy. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with the BSP. This is the Bureau of Plans and Statistics?
Bureau of Statistics and Plans, yeah.
I'm not aware of.
Yeah, they had started the study and they supposedly handed it off to GVB. So just wondering what the status of that was.
I've not seen that.
Okay, thank you.
What is the thrust of the strategy? Maybe that'll.
I don't have the details, but the overall is it's rebranding and repositioning.
Well, it might be very similar to what we're doing or trying to do now. If we can go over this, and basically repositioning in two ways. The first thing is more diversification of our markets. And second thing is each of our market segments, we try to upsell it so that we have a yield improvement on yield. And so all that is anchored into a branded message. And I'm sorry she's not here now, but she mentioned something about improving product in Tumon Bay and so forth, right? Which is important because probably 90% of our visitors see Guam through the prism of what they see in Tumon Bay. But that's not Guam. Guam is the whole island. And so part of the funding that Governor Carl was looking at as well is recapitalizing on our cultural and historical assets, which underscore our branded image. So in terms of repositioning, that's what I'm aware of that we've been trying to do for a number of years now, is improve the yield per visitor, diversify market, and reinforce our brand identity that differentiates us from other island destinations anywhere. I'm not sure whether I've helped you, but...
No, that's great. I would like to see more of that diversification, more of that connection to the cultural aspect of things, and you know,
We have, we have moved our thinking into this Chamorro-centric push for our island. Absolutely.
That's wonderful. The other thing I think you mentioned, Governor, was the, sorry, one more question really, was the medical tourism. So, you know, I heard there were some Asians that were turned away because they wanted to get vaccinations here, but it was only for the local population. You know, is that something that could potentially be looked at?
Well, certainly, first of all of the vaccinations that come here are free. It's the government that is given the vaccinations. To have private clinics do it, they'll have to be able to get those eventually for private use. But right now, all they do is, if it continues, you know, to be only for the government that they give the vaccines to, because they've taken Moderna because you don't need much cooling process as the Pfizer. So the Moderna has been given out to different clinics on this island, and they give you the vaccination there. They don't charge the per patient, but they get paid $50 from the federal funds for those administering the vaccine. Now, if we can figure out how to do that and charge and give it back to the federal government, maybe we can try to do that too. But it's a good thing that I don't think, you know, the 120 million Japanese, maybe half of that would be eligible for vaccination, and Taiwan probably 10 million, and Korea out of the 54 maybe 30 million. So they may not be able to get all the vaccinations completed there, but they can come and work here in a condo and stay 30 days, and we're trying to figure that out.
All right, Mrs. Uzumasi. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Perez. Now, Senator Moylan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Governor, Dr. Perez, Josie. Good afternoon. I was just looking at your slide, and it reminded me not too long ago in FY 2019, we had these record-breaking 1.63 million visitors, and before the pandemic, as it says on your slide, 7.5% increase. We were close to 2 million, and I think at one time we were also talking about $1 billion budget for the government of Guam. But some of the things we were facing there with the increase in tourism as well was we didn't have enough rooms. Right? We were talking about that, and I can see we're giving ourselves a moment here, the acronym that you're using, but eventually we're going to get back to that. And maybe now is the time we could be looking at to have that rooms available. You know, some could say it's like, you got to be kidding, you want to increase hotel capacity of rooms, but maybe now's the time that we can look at this. And I'm sure you're aware that we do have a public law, 32233, that talks about increasing the room capacity with this special hotel QC. And it gave us the authority for additional 1,600 hotel rooms. Yeah. And I think with the last hotel that was built, we got 350. This QC is expiring. It got the extension of a couple more years, but it's going to expire in December of this year. What do you envision? Do you want this?
Well, of course, you know, when you brought this up several times, it's such an important issue that I equated it back when I was trying to drive the number of hotel rooms that we needed 12,000 hotel rooms to match our airlines coming in. You know, we made it up to 9,000 rather. And then, you know, we had air crash, we had typhoon, so everything stopped for a while, right? But in this manner of having, you know, that 1,600 room vision to build, it didn't quite pan out because things just fell apart. The H2 processes have failed on the wayside. But it's such an important issue. GVB, Ed Camacho has been on top of this thing. Last week we brought the people down to GVB. We discussed it. Not only are they moving forward to report to their board that they do want to support it, But I asked also not only to build these rooms, but to include that special qualifying certificate for a length of time to upgrade some of these hotels that haven't been upgraded, because we're trying to push the higher paying people to come here. And so they also are amenable to that, because some are applying for that upgrade. That will bring up a higher group of tourists. So we are pushing for that. And I also asked him not only to extend it for a couple of years, but extend it even more. And so that's our weapon to be able to, accomplish our goal.
Thank you, Governor. I support you on that, and we want to move that forward as well. In addition to the hotel rooms, while we were in our booming situation there, and we'll get back, we also experienced some issues with our parks. You mentioned our parks, like Matapang Beach, Ipaw Beach, and so forth. And one of the past public hearings, we talked about the tour groups came and presented to us. They just want to use the bathroom, right? Where's the open bathroom? And since that time, we've had the $6 million in Department of Interior grants, and we've been able to restore many of our bathrooms. But our continuous problem that we see is vandalism. Right? We get it all nice and everything. It's beautiful tiling, and the ones at Ipaw Beach and Matapang as well. But shortly thereafter, it's repaired. It's vandalized. So I appreciate that we are getting the grant of $18 million from GITA there to support the renovation of Matapang Beach. But I'm wondering if on the long-term goal, we need something there with a partnership with private enterprise to help us maintain our parks. We're going to put in $18 million, and we put in $6 million before, and we'll continue to put in money, but our vandalism is a reoccurring problem, unfortunately. So I'm wondering what your feeling is about public-private partnerships to support keeping these things long-lasting for our local and for our tourists as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. The biggest problem we have is that if you continue to have government to run, clean up these beaches or give a contract for someone, but they leave it at night, and so one thing the first one I asked when I came into GBB was Charles Bell, who was just moved in to be the DFS. I said, hey, I think I'm going to give you one challenge right away. He said, what's that? I said, there's the bathroom down there in Rohan, next to that swimming pool. Now that thing is locked up most of the times. I've got videos of poor girls, holding a blanket around while they use the bathroom outside. I said, can we get into a partnership where you privately go down there and build a nice bathroom and give it to a family that's like about 10 feet away from that, 24 hours a day, that's their place, and they'll guard that, and make it a partnership that way. And he was not, averse to it, but it's something like that, where we give it to families, as I did when I was governor on Laddystone Park. It was being vandalized. We put new bathrooms in there. So we had a family that was on welfare. There's 7 kids. We gave them lawnmowers, bush cutters, materials for cleaning, and it's 24 hours. I think it was $49,000 we gave them to keep that for 1 year and keep it maintained and guarded. That's the kind of partnership we need to do, even within our community. Because you cannot just give a contract out there, lock it up in the evening, and expect it to be the same way the next morning. It's not going to happen. Never has. So yes, you're right. That's the most important thing. Can you imagine what those girls were saying when they went back to Japan? You can't get into a bathroom unless you have a Japanese key or something.
Thank you, Governor. And then just the final question, you mentioned about our abandoned buildings, right? We have across Blessed Diego Church down in Tumon that infamous parking lot where we constantly call the cops up when their screaming gets too loud from those staying in there and the drug busts that go on in there as well. So that parking lot was from that old hotel that was destroyed after the earthquake and back in 1980, maybe 88 or 89, I forget
That parking structure?
Right, that parking lot was
Well, that thing went down in 93. Oh.
Right, right. So we have a deadline?
Actually, the deadline is only by legal constraints, and that's what Public Work has been doing. There's a process you got to go through. And right now, they are moving forward in making this thing happen. You just can't go in there and start kicking at it. But yes, they are moving. Vince Ariola is on top of this thing, believe me. And once they go through the whole legal steps, and maybe make a foreclosure, knock it down, or they can't foreclose it, knock it down, and charge the owner, or then take over. But that's what they're doing, absolutely.
Sounds great, Governor. And by the way, Vince sings at the choir at 7 a.m. Mass, and we talk about it regularly as well. The parking lot directly across from the church. So
yeah.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Dr. Paris and Josie. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Moylan, and to all of my colleagues today for your questions, especially to GVB, to the management and the team at the Bureau for all of the topics that we covered today. I think we have a very wide range of topics that we touched on, but a very targeted approach that we can look forward to in the coming months as we engage with all of our partners, from the hotels and the restaurants to the Department of Parks and Recreation, both our private and public sector partners. So we look forward to that while we continue to prioritize the health and safety of our local workforce as well as our visitors. So Suduas Masi to you, Mr. Perez, to Governor Gutierrez, and Ms. Josie, thank you for being here today. And with that, the time now is 3:51 p.m., and this informational hearing is now adjourned. Suduas Masi.
Thank you.